Up next, we have the Department of Finance, and in front of us, joining the committee, is the Secretary, Mr. David Atalik. As the members were aware, we had tried to schedule this meeting before beginning the budget hearings for all agencies, and so while the department also submitted its request, I think one of the main updates that we would like to get, particularly relates to where we're at with ARPA, because that that would assist the committee in trying to see how else we can fund these requests that we've been getting from agencies. But to start off, maybe at this time, we'll just hand the floor over to you, Secretary, just to brief the members on where we're at in regards to um, what's left of the ARPA, and what are the plans moving forward and how to expend the remaining um, ARPA funding, and then I'll open up to the floor to the members to ask any follow up questions. So, at this time, Secretary, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Donald Magnolia, distinguished members of this awesome House Ways and Means Committee. I want to thank you for the opportunity to meet with you and answer any questions in regards to our Commonwealth's finances. And as you mentioned, Chairman, in terms of our ARPA, we are still working on the details of the availability of ARPA throughout regarding requests from the different departments and agencies. I will assure you that we are committed to help the departments. Obviously, the main submission in April was to cover and make sure all our employees of the government are covered with their 20% of their budget through ARPA to get us through while our local revenues get back to pre-pandemic levels. As we all know, we received $481.8 million from ARPA, and of that, we have committed already about $348 million in different projects, and what has been spent since 2021. Actually, half the year of FY 2021 was ARPA, as well as the full fiscal year this year of the ARPA funding for all staff across the government to ensure that we get out of austerity. We have different pockets into ARPA. I wasn't prepared to talk the details of each section in our maybe an update of our different spending plan items, but I can assure you that we have different pockets of funds with ARPA based on the spending on the original spending plan. And so the only major change in terms of the spending plan actually was two items. One is the Capital Projects Fund, Section 604. While we anticipated upon the passage of ARPA, we thought it would go all to water, sewer, and broadband. But as the U.S. Treasury put out their final interim rule and the final rule of the guidelines for ARPA, 604 is strictly 100% for broadband. And so our plan with these funds shifted. And so we are now working on a major broadband master plan for the whole Commonwealth, including broadband and communications going towards the Northern Islands. The other major component that was unallowable that we included in our spending plan was the Medicaid matching. We are unable to use ARPA for local Medicaid match. And so that put some funds available for ARPA in the different pockets of the spending plan. I'm open to any questions to the committee regarding any areas of ARPA. Um, Chairman,
Yeah.
are you back to
So
the
how much in total again was for 604?
14,285,714.
And of the what was proposed for next fiscal year to uh, bring employees out of austerity, is the administration going to propose anything in the revised budget for operational expenses?
Yes, we will be submitting um, areas and provisions of government. This is the area where we utilize anticipated loss of revenue and based on a U.S. Treasury formulary and the amount that we could use of ARPA for operations. And we will include, like we did last fiscal year, uh, amounts for WGI and amounts for utility so that it can ease the burden on the departments for utility. And then also operational needs of the different departments
Now
will be included in the revised budget.
you mentioned utility, but when we went to Road and Tinian, it seems like the municipalities were the ones paying for their utilities. Can you clarify if it should have been taken out of this pot that was set aside for utilities?
Yes, I provided all the departments and activity heads and the mayor's a memo late last beginning of fiscal year with an account number that they can utilize to charge their utilities.
Okay, yeah, because the mayor was under the impression that it would have had to come out of their operational budgets, and so that's what they've been doing all this time is using up their operational budget for
Both
utilities.
mayors?
At least Tinian.
Oh.
Mayor Don, that was one of the concerns that he brought up. Is that the utilities was coming out of their operational budget.
I can definitely get in contact with Tinian and their
Yeah.
administration to uh, share with them.
Okay. Thank you. Do you know what the amount
That we're going to allocate?
that? Yeah.
We allocated in FY 2022 $10 million. We anticipate we were going to do the same, but with the utility increases, we're going to have to analyze it, probably bump it to 12 million, at least 20% increase.
Okay. Well, sorry. I think what I was gonna ask is, do you know how much, or what you plan to set aside for next fiscal year in regards to the provisions of government, in addition to the 16 million that's already set aside for personnel?
We're probably more looking at a total provisions of government close to 100 million
For fiscal year
for
23.
fiscal year 23.
So this would be the 16 for personnel, and then the remaining
Right.
on operations. Okay. Well, I know there's going to be several questions in regards to some of the projects for ARPA, but at this time, I will open the floor to members in regards to just the overall ARPA budget for operations of the entire of the government. So at this time, any members have questions in relation to the government's operations just for ARPA? I recognize Rep. Sablon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Secretary Atalig. My first ARPA-related question has to do with CHCC. So we had them come in for their budget hearing, and we learned that they still have not received any of the $10 million that was allocated in the governor's proposal for MRI, and also that they are still that there have been some delays in the transfer of ARPA funds for medical referral and they haven't received any of the general fund appropriations or the SNOUT appropriations for CHCC that we've passed in this body. And could you give us an update and what the reason is for these delays in fund transfers?
Thank you, Rep. Saban. I wasn't aware of any delays in the appropriations, which was brought up earlier this week. And after finding out more information this morning, I was informed that we had not, although the SNILE passage for funds for CHCC was there, uh, the normal process, or I should say, the practice of how it financed before, if a SNILE bill gets passed, we set up accounts, and then we usually get a request from the different agencies or recipients of these funds, a memo requesting for those funds, and then that's when we utilize that as a request. Now, CHCC, I don't have any record of them requesting for some of the money from the SNILE. I do have requests for the medical referral as well as some of the ARPA, and we've been transferring some monies to CHCC. We've are in communication. In fact, we've also are helping out CHCC with their advance expenses for COVID, which they have not received reimbursements yet. And so I've already transferred several $1 million to them. So when they do receive the reimbursements, they'll direct that reimbursement back to the general fund. And so I work closely with both Pearlie and CEO. And so if in terms with their financial needs, and I'm always helping and working with them. In terms of the MRI, there's actually two projects in ARPA for CHCC, the MRI and the
Is that the X-ray, the mobile X-ray? Oh, yeah. Okay. The
So,
hyperbaric chamber.
yes.
Okay.
Which is assigned to IRP for CHCC. So they're working with CHCC with Warren as the facilities in charge, and we also will be reimbursing CHCC, or if not, if they're not charging IRP from their A&E contract. They got an engineer that works with specifies or are experts in the healthcare field.
Mhm.
And so they're putting together a couple proposals for those two projects.
Okay, so for the ARPA-funded projects, MRI and the hyperbaric chamber, you wouldn't be transferring ARPA funds to CHCC. It would go to IRP,
Yes,
which is managing the project.
It's going to IRP to manage it, and once it's all completed, the budget and the project is there for them. And once it's completed, it's almost like a turnkey.
Mhm.
They'll be the recipient of.
Okay, so how much has actually been transferred in ARPA funds to CHCC?
I don't have the exact numbers, but I can get that to you fairly quickly.
How about specifically for medical referrals, since that has been a pretty significant source of deficit spending for the government, right? So where are we in terms of those transfers?
Well, we transfer when Pearlie submits, or their finance office submits to us a request, then we process the requests, and I assume that transfers are done. If transfers aren't done, then I'll ensure that we're doing. The funds are there.
Yeah,
It's not like we're
right.
holding it or hoarding it.
And,
It's
and into the
just-
Budget Act, as you probably are aware, CHCC is supposed to get advance allotments for medical referral specifically. That's actually in the law. And from what we heard, they haven't received their third quarter allotment.
Okay, so I know I've been in communication, and I had some requests
Mhm.
when I was off island, and I did share that when I get back, we'll make sure we take care of all this. But I am aware because there are still some operational costs that we're dealing with the medical referral program, and so we're still we're not 100% transitioned to CHCC. And so our communication with CHCC and the governor's office, the administration, is definitely by the new fiscal year, 100% of all the operation contracts, hotels, transportation, airfare, all that will be 100% with the CHCC.
Okay.
We're communicating. There's no hindrance in the program transition. They slowly wanted to do it as well, slowly, because they even went to the different referral offices to do their own internal desk audit to look at their operation. In fact, I was with CO and CFO of CACC in California, so we can know what are the contracts with the administration that they will be taking over. And so it's a work in progress, but we both know that the 100% transition period should be by October 1st.
Okay.
Prior to the transition of this new fiscal year, the administration is responsible for any back bills prior to, and we're still working that out because as they're receiving billings, they're looking at the dates and then also forwarding that to us. When we made the budget in ARPA for medical referral was also to take care of some previous billings or debt or invoices that weren't paid yet in the program. So it was giving us an opportunity to also take care of some of those arrears.
Okay. Well, thank you for that update. And as you may be aware, the House just passed the Health Network program bill that we worked on with your office as well as CHCC and other offices, other stakeholders, and that should, we hope, if it's enacted, also facilitate the transition to CHCC. And then my last question for ARPA, you mentioned that we learned, I guess, after the budget was enacted, that we can't use ARPA funds for the Medicaid match. And so how are we meeting the Medicaid match? Where have you had to draw those funds from?
A good question. We're just in communication. I just recently received communication from Medicaid office about a month and a half ago, and they are asking for about $7.5 million in other funding sources for their operation that they are using. They're using the matching requirements, working with CHCC as well as their office, and using basically these operational costs or salary costs as matching, which is what they've been doing in their program. In terms of, we were hoping that we can help them completely, including their Medicaid's need for their new IT system, their new, and so we were hoping that the monies we set aside originally in the spending plan was to help them completely, so that we can get into the new billing process and help them so that they can help our community. So to answer your question directly, I really don't know exactly how they use it. I know there was some transfers to Medicaid, and so I believe we used some funds, but I think we need to do an accounting entry to reverse that and find local funds to use what they've already spent. So in the beginning, we were allowing it, and we gave Medicaid money. We gave them an account that they can use to charge against, and they were using it. And so when we learned that we couldn't use it, and they also recognized, Medicaid themselves recognized that that was unallowable. And so they were asking us to kind of offset some other costs for them in the term of like $7 million, which we're working on looking at.
Okay. So you'd have to reprogram then from other agencies, and
I'll
then
just have to
cover it over with ARPA funds for those agencies?
Yeah, look at Medicaid and cover the ones that we did use ARPA for, and reverse that and find local funds to use as a match, because we cannot show that we used any local ARPA funds.
Okay,
So-
thank you. I yield for this round, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other members in regards to government operations? If none, then Secretary, if we can just go more deeply into some of the programs and some of the activities that the administration had initially proposed in the for the current fiscal year. I know since we're on the topic of CHCC, one of the proposal that was given to us for the current fiscal year allocates 11 million for CHC frontline workers, but according to the CEO during their budget hearing, they've only paid out half of what was set aside for CHCC. Has that?
Is this in their operational?
No, this is a section 602. This would be for premium pay for health
Premium pay.
frontline workers and what was proposed for CHC was 11 million for the current fiscal year, but according to CHCC, they've only paid out around 5 million because that's what they've received.
I believe we budgeted not 100% for CHCC. It was premium pay as a category. Of that, they did receive close to $6 million for premium pay. Was there another additional?
Well, according to the volume 1 for the current fiscal year, it would propose to set aside 30 million altogether for premium pay for essential workers.
Oh, yes.
11 for CHCC, 13 for government frontline workers, and then 6 for private healthcare. So the 11 million that was initially proposed, has that changed? And
The plan has not changed. The way the process works in our communication is CHCC will submit to my department their spending plan on their premium pay. Now, they were the first to receive premium pay, and their method of premium pay is not lump sum like we did for all government employees.
Right.
They have a formulary based on position, number of hours, and they do get a premium pay per hour additional. They have a very detailed spreadsheet on how they're doing it, and I commended them for it because they were very thoughtful in how they were going to pay premium pay to different sectors of the hospital. We've received 2 requests. We've complied to their requests. So if there's another request from them, I'm more than happy to work it out with them. Like I said, we have not changed any spending plan on the ARPA. So things are still in those areas and budgeted for it.
okay, thank you. Now I want to move on into, again, as I mentioned, some of the programs that the administration has implemented. One of them being the stimulus, and I know there's plans for the second stimulus, but if we can just address the first stimulus and with people not knowing of the deadline and missing out on those funds, not knowing that there was a deadline to use up those funds, what happened to those funds, and would they still be eligible to try to claim those funds?
At the moment, in the first stimulus, we had an implementation plan for the stimulus, which identified a period of time for them to utilize the stimulus. And the deadline for that was March 30 of 2022. The department or the Division of Rev and Tax has put out press releases. I've come out in public in press conferences sharing that there was 2 deadlines, a deadline to apply for it and then a deadline to utilize it. And I feel we could have done a better job informing. We monitor the usage of the stimulus, and a bulk of it was used. Over $25 million issued out, in the first 3-4 months. Over 20 million was spent. And so looking and not dragging out the program, there was a deadline. And when we closed the deadline, there was a little over $2 million that was closed out. We know, we have a list of who these people are. But when we signed an implementation plan, it detailed the program, the different aspects of the program with a deadline. I am in communicate. We are discussing, uh, looking at how to uh, assist those that there was several that never used it, and whether we're not sure what the reasons may be. Nonetheless, those were closed out. So we're gonna review that. Um, but before we went into making any decisions, we went ahead and worked on the second stimulus so that we can get that out
Okay.
as soon as we can.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. The last one that I have before I open up to members, I believe I read a few weeks ago that the Senate was also in support of premium pay for people who in the private sectors who have, you know, who were called to work to provide these services. Are there any plans to extend premium pay to private sectors, i.e., bank,
Yeah,
convenience stores?
there was in our original spending plan of ARPA, we did not include uh, the whole population. We included in helping households, which is an allowable expense, is the stimulus, utility stimulus, and then within premium pay, we only had set aside originally those in the healthcare industry. That was directly kind of related to COVID. So we did that. We're still processing and helping the private sector clinics, and we also included pharmacies, as well as ambulatory services to give them premium pay, and we did not have a program to help the private sector. Now, we did have, and we still have a program that we're probably going to roll out in the next month, is small business assistance. We're going to help small businesses that can apply for a forgivable loan. Similar, we're following the SBA's PPP program, where they can request for funding for help for their operations, their payroll, inventory. The whole idea is to help them boost their business so that they can be in a position that their business is doing well as we end this, fully close out a pandemic. And so we're looking for that program to roll out in the next month. That's an option for these small businesses to come and apply for.
Yeah.
We've set out $15 million for this program. And so we're excited that that can help out small businesses that did not avail. Now, keep in mind, with ARPA and even prior to ARPA, all the private sector and CARES Act had a lot of opportunities for small businesses from the federal level to help them get through the pandemic. And then in terms of helping these people indirectly, we did our own local stimulus so that helped everyone. It wasn't just government employees or the healthcare side. It was every resident had the opportunity to get some funding for their assistance. And then this second stimulus will do the same.
Thank you. Any members? I recognize Rep. Babalta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. I'm sorry you didn't bring a team with you, but nonetheless, you're here. I have a lot on my list here. First of all, how much is the Munis contract?
The total Munis project, including PSS and CHCC, is it's about $3.8 million. And that's just for software, and then implementation and consulting would put this just under $5 million total.
Thank you for that. What's the funding source of that?
It is part of our EDA grant that we receive for the resiliency and resiliency center. So Department of Finance received $19.8 million from EDA for hardware, software, as well as building a new Department of Finance building.
Okay. Ever since, and the reason why I asked that is because ever since Munis was implemented, we here at the legislature have had many problems with it. We also heard about the problems in the municipalities. I mean, to date, this was implemented October, let's say October 1st, the new fiscal year. To date, the contractor has not provided any training to the approving, the authority, like myself, for my account. Other than to give us our login credentials, that's it, nothing more. Um, and I would like to sit down with the contractor if you can arrange that. It's very hard to get a hold of them. And then, I've also the when Munis, and I speak for my office alone. Ever since Munis was implemented, it has hindered the operations of my office for months now, because on my side it's showing that I'm a negative on my local count. And when we call finance, they said I'm not negative. Come to find out, I've had other representatives, office supplies being charged to my account. So I know that's not an error on our part, you know, on my side at least. Aside from having another representatives, and I don't know how many in total actually, but they're charging, it's, my office account, and who knows, I don't know about the other accounts, because I don't have access to that. But I can't even buy ink. I haven't had been able to buy ink for my printer for the last 4 months because it's showing negative on my side. And when we call finance, they said, no, you're not negative. And I'm trying to get an actual balance from finance, and I don't trust the number they're giving me, because that was numbers from months ago. So I don't know what else has come in that were charged to my account. So I really need to get to the bottom of my account, at least for me. We heard it from the municipalities. The Rhoda mayor said once Munis came into effect, his account was negative 6,000. So it's not just an isolated, well, it may be isolated pockets in different agencies, maybe a glitch, if you would. But I would really appreciate it if somebody could dedicate some time to give us some training on the Munis, because the only thing I received was to establish my login credentials and how to approve stuff. So that's one. I'm very concerned about this program that the administration is going to implement for the Pacific Mini Games. And while we support the athletes in any way we can, I'm really concerned about the incentive awards, 5,000 for gold medalist teams and individual members. I mean, for one sport alone, let's say baseball, you're talking, if a team received the gold medal in that particular sport, uh, even the individual members will get up to $1,000 or $1,000 on top of the 5,000. You're talking at least 10,000 for one team. Where is the funding source coming from?
Thank you, Rep. Babalta. Um, the first one regarding training and Munis, I will definitely make sure that you're contacted and scheduled for training. Just one quick comment on training. As we were implementing the Tyler Munis software program, we had multiple calls and in terms of announcements of training for everyone across the board on even Road and Tinian. We've also spent a lot of time um, trying to help. Nonetheless, there's going to be challenges expected in implementing any system. We anticipated challenges and bugs. We're getting through them at one day at a time.
Sure.
But I would definitely make sure that yourself, your office, and anyone in the legislature are afforded additional or even more training to get you to understand the system. That I'll ensure. As for the Pacific Mini Games, we budgeted for Pacific Mini Games as sports tourism, and we gave them a budget, and it basically gave the funds to the organizing committee and how they operate the program. It's strictly how they do it. So the funds is coming within their budget. They've also received many monetary donations, as well as they're getting additional fees from every team that participates, coming from the grand organizational, the big Oceanic Games Committee. If, for lack of, I don't know what I can't think of their name, but they're also getting funds from that. And so, how they put their budget together, that would be something, and how they do this incentive, that would be up to the local organizational committee. It's not a extra pot of money that I did see that request, and I saw that in their program, and like yourself, I thought, wow, that's it's like it's like the U.S. Olympics. I guess you you win a medal and you're a millionaire. But nonetheless, I know that was if every event was won by CNMI, their proposal, and so I don't anticipate that every event's going to be won by the CNMI. I would love that to happen, but being realistic and looking at that request, that was a shocking amount, but I think it's going to be drastically less or lesser than we think. But that will be up to the organizational committee.
So, if I heard you correctly, you said you set aside some money for their budget. How much was set aside for
A
that?
total of $4 million for this
Oh,
Pacific Mini
yeah.
Games.
4 million. And what was the funding source for the 4 million?
Uh,
Where did
we
it come from?
Well, prior to getting ARPA, we were setting aside
Okay.
local funds for it as our commitment since we committed prior to ARPA. But after getting assurance from U.S. Treasury that doing sports tourism and the Pacific Games qualified as part of ARPA, so I gave 4 million in ARPA.
You gave 4 million in ARPA, and is that an allowable cost?
hmm
Okay.
Yeah.
And you categorized it as sports tourism program. Was MVA involved? Because we just had them in here this morning, and they didn't mention whether they had any involvement in this.
MVA is involved with. They're part of the
Okay. Maybe just
organizing committee.
they just didn't mention it,
Yeah.
but okay.
I don't think it's something that they're trying to like exclude. I think they're
Yeah.
just focused on local funds or local
Sure.
programs.
Also, I wanted to follow up on the status of, like Representative Tina Sablan, the 1 million for NMC. That was a local appropriation bill that I authored, giving NMC 1 million and CHCC 1 million. So I would like to inquire on the status of the 1 million for NMC, which they also confirmed that they have not received. And this law local law was signed back in April. So
Yes.
do you have any updates on that?
As of this morning, we did not transfer any funds to either CHCC or NMC of that $2 million appropriation. Um, and the reason that was given to me, although I'm not fully just accepting of it, was the practice at finance for many, many years is when appropriations bill outside of the Budget Act is they would receive it, we get notification, and then when the recipient of these funds uh, submit a request to finance for that transfer for those funds, and then they'll set up the account and then transfer the funds. We
So
had
that's what
not,
needs to happen.
yeah, that's the practice. I'm not saying that's the way the process should be. I will
So
ensure
what
that
will it take
it's just
today?
for me to get this to them. It's not
Okay.
an issue of, they didn't ask for it either.
Uh-huh.
It's not their blame, or maybe they were expecting it just to be transferred. And
I
then
think
again,
I think that's the case.
so I will take the blame on that, but I'll ensure that they'll get it.
Okay.
The monies are there.
Do you have any expected date or time frame?
Well, this morning I asked them to set up the accounts.
Okay. So it
So
takes roughly about
you
another
can-
week, maybe?
at the latest.
Okay. Got it. Who is funding or how are the attorneys for the governors and attorneys in the criminal case and court cases, all of the court cases, how are they being funded? Who's paying for it?
Depending on the department, in the the governor's office is paying it out of their operational accounts.
I'm talking specifically about the governor.
Yeah.
He has several cases against the JGO. Now it's on appeal with the Supreme Court. He's got a criminal case
Mhm.
that the Attorney General filed. Who's paying for those attorneys?
So those are
It's
all
coming out of the governor's operational
the
funds?
governor's operational account.
Okay.
Likewise with the other uh, legal services. In my office, I took care of Ms. Bernie Palacios's legal fee
Okay.
out of Department of Finance.
That was for the JGO hearing.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So these are professional services contract then?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you know how much has been expended to date, approximately?
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
can get that.
I didn't expect you to. One last question, if I may, Mr. Chairman. We had DPS in here last week, and the commissioner and his staff before him appeared and said they're totally fine with what the governor submitted on April 1st, which is zeroing out their operations, and they didn't even flinch about that. They said, we're okay, we're fine with it, we'll accept it. And when the commissioner appeared here last Friday, he reiterated the same thing. He's okay with the budget submission provided by the governor. And he also went further to say that, the administration and the Department of Finance has been really accommodating as to DPS's needs. Whenever they need money, they just, come to Department of Finance and say, hey, we need this. And Department of Finance and the administration has accommodated them, and to a point where even the administrative staff have received overtime, something that has not happened in the past. So I'm wondering, where are you finding the funds to reprogram for DPS? If we zero out their operations today, because they said they're okay with it, where would their funding
Oh,
source
no.
for their operations come from?
Their budget submission and requests goes to OMB, and at OMB, we are identifying provisions of government for their department, likewise with all the other departments. So in terms of speaking of DPS, I'm aware of several contractual agreements that they have, especially with FEMA, providing security services for FEMA. They're receiving some funds and they're utilizing that for their operation, and so forth. Some of the federal grants that they get.
Yes, they did mention that there were some reimbursements they were getting from FEMA and COVID and stuff.
Mhm.
But I mean, moving forward into FY 2023, if we zero out their operations, they said finance has been accommodating their requests at any given point of the year, and I'm just wondering where.
I think that sounds very. It doesn't play out that way. They do come to the office or to the governor and request for, let's say, 200 radios. I scrutinize that request. I question what's the need, how are they doing without it right now, and so forth. I'm probably maybe sometimes as worse as having a budget hearing and oversight on their how they're expending it. And so I do question, and we make sure that maybe you don't need 200. We'll get 100, and so forth. So we talk about that. It's been a practice in the last couple of fiscal years. I call in all departments towards the end of the third quarter to look at their expenses and moving on, trying to help with anticipating closing of the fiscal year, and questioning a lot of their expenditures going forward, trying to end the fiscal year as much as we can, not with a growing deficit. And so DPS is one of those. Actually, it's all the DPS, DOC, and DFEMS is where I'm challenged, because they spend. They can't on their normal operations. If nothing happens, I believe they can stay within their budget. But events like COVID or something happens, it just balloons their budget, their expenditures. Trying to figure out a good balance of how to budget them, or even have some sort of, I don't want to say reserve, but an anticipated pocket of money that can help with these unforeseen circumstances that increases their expenses. But
Thank you. One other question: Are we expending any funds, government funds, for this Fit to Lead, Fit to Walk, Fit to Run program that the governor has
no,
implemented? No. Okay.
no.
Lastly, I would like to put on record I'm requesting for the contracts for the attorneys for the governor, all of them, and I'd like to receive it by tomorrow, no later than tomorrow, if you can, if your staff can accommodate that, and any payments made thus far. Do you think that is possible?
I believe so, because there's not any. It's not a multiple number of different new contracts.
Okay, so thank you. That's all I have, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you, Rep. Bauta. Before I hand the floor over, just a couple of clarifying questions in regards to the budget allocation. So I know that the legislature was given a lump sum budget. How did the how did your office allocate all other agencies? Is it the same? Is it by the quarter? Is it monthly?
In the individual accounts, or
Yes.
I don't know if I understand your question. If
So like the legislature got their entire budget as a lump sum,
in ARPA,
ARPA and general fund,
I think general fund is done monthly.
not for the legislature.
So that's a question I would need to get back to you and find out from OMB, and ask OMB how are they
But
entering that into the system.
okay, but for the executive branch, it's provided monthly.
Monthly ARPA, we give them they get the lump sum of budget because of ARPA, or access to it, but their general funds is monthly, I believe.
Okay. Well, the reason I bring that up is, it is an election year, and so, seats will change, and that's one of the concerns is if it
Yeah,
gets
I understand.
lump sum and somebody uses up all the budget for the
For the new,
next. Yeah.
yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that with
I,
ARPA as well, like with the municipalities and changing the mayors or the mayors up for reelection.
I think, great question, Chairman. And in my recollection, and 2 years ago, or when the shift of some members leaving and some new members coming in, I believe where the staff at finance and OMB are on top of that because they know based on historic challenges of they ensure and make sure that we don't allot more than the quarter, and then the month of January is prorated by
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
So
So
I think we can ensure that that stays the same.
okay, yeah. I mean, even with ARPA, because I've been getting reports that their counts have already been overdrawn, and it's just it may be attributed to proper planning and proper. But is finance still set to launch the rest of Munis October 1st?
So we anticipate to launch the one last major piece, which is HCM, Human Capital Management. It's the personnel side of things. So OPM will be automated in their processing of personal actions, NOPAs, all personnel, even through the payroll will go through that system, including employee expense and employee self-service, meaning employees and every government employee will have access to their personnel records and their biweekly payroll. Um, we will probably implement January in January, or I would say February of next year. They'll get their W-2s via this system electronically. We anticipate to go live with that on August 30, and then fully 100% go live for the new fiscal year with HCM. Munis financials, all that, they're all live, where we anticipate to clean up as much as we can to make it a smoother new fiscal year with the new system. Um, there's another module that deals with permitting and business license um, going online. We are launching that end of August as well. For you can apply for business license, corporations. You can submit for your documents for corporations and nonprofits online, and they'll go through with along with zoning. And so that's anticipated as the first go live end of August, and then shortly after, every month or every other month, we'll be rolling out different permits to include, construction permits through the EnerGov system.
Okay.
And so that will be an ongoing project in Munis.
Okay.
Is there any particular Munis
No, that was
module
what I was
you're
talking
aware?
about, the permitting, the one-stop shop,
Yeah,
and all
exactly.
of that stuff. So it's good to hear that that's still on schedule as
Yes.
planned. I recognize the vice chair.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome, Secretary Atalik. Like Rep. Babata, I have many questions, but they're in no particular order. So I guess I will just start with a follow-up question. When DPS came in, the commissioner did reiterated that he is in acceptance and agreement with the governor's proposed budget, which is crazy because the operations was zero funded. Um, I know that we're anticipating a revised budget to be submitted by July 1st. Are there any government agencies or departments that will not be receiving ARPA funds?
No, I
For
think
their
every department will, outside of personnel, will have some operational funds.
I'm sure that's a relief to hear for many of the
Mhm.
agencies. Um, did the revenue projections of $103 million change by any chance?
Um, no, we we're sticking with the total of 150. Obviously, less the obligations the government has.
Mhm.
Um, we are hopeful that some programs will be activated. More uh, construction activity will happen in the next fiscal year that will anticipate hopefully a generations of new funds or additional funds not projected. And so
Mhm.
when that comes, I'm hoping that it's something that helps us and not added, so that we can stick within a conservative level.
Can you help us understand why the governor's budget submission was submitted the way it was with zero funding for, I think, almost all the agencies under their operations?
I believe we submitted to ensure that the all personnel are submitted, and that's the priority. In terms and with the anticipation of a revised budget to assist and show the different pockets of ARPA and how it's helping the operation. I think it was a matter of time constraint and trying to get you something by April 1st. I think that was a priority at the time.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna kind of go off on a tangent here. And this morning we met with MVA for their budget hearing, and we spoke about the travel bucks. So can you just help us? How much was budgeted for the travel bucks for the Korea bubble?
For travel bucks specifically, I'm not too sure what that budget was, but for the trip program, it was $15 million for Korea and another $15 million for
For
Japan.
Okay, so
I'm not sure if they included that within the 15 million, because the travel bucks is a program of trip.
right.
So I'm assuming it's within the 15 million.
Okay, so they would have the actual numbers as to how much was issued
Oh yeah.
or budgeted versus what was actual. And the reason why I'm asking you this question is because they had explained that any of the travel bucks that were not used were deactivated and it goes back to finance. And so I wanted to know how much exactly of those went back to finance and how those monies will be spent.
Yeah, it does not actually. It doesn't really go back to finance. It goes back into the account that we have. These are travel bucks are issued out with prepaid cards, and it can only be used in the Commonwealth.
Mhm.
And so if they bring these cards with them to Korea, it will not work in Korea. And so the remaining funds, if they don't use it, it's use it or lose it. If they don't use it, then what we do is we can close those accounts and the funds go back into the whole pot of the travel bucks. So it doesn't actually come back to finance. Maybe when the program is over and they're done, but the trip program is still ongoing.
Do you know when that program will end?
Um, the Korea, I know that. Well, I don't know when it will end, but I know July 31st. Wait, it was June, July, August 31st was the date that comes to mind.
Okay.
I know there was a 3 month like this aggressive training campaign in Korea, and then for our hopes for Japan is starting late July.
Okay. So when the program does end and and there's a final count of how much money went back into that pot, are
Yeah,
there
it will
any
come back. It will be financed to be able to get that money back.
okay, and are do you know what those monies will be spent on if
It will go back into the overall
overall
ARPA
ARPA
program.
and kind of reallocated?
Hmm.
Okay.
Sorry, Vice. Can I get a clarification? Because according to MVA, the travel box is an unallowable cost under ARPA, and it was being funded through other means.
In the first batches of ARPA, I mean, I'm sorry, of Travel Bucks program, it was the um, Attorney General's opinion that we could not use travel bucks. We could not use ARPA for travel bucks. And so we didn't use any ARPA for travel bucks. What we did was we used funds that we had and owed MVA for HOT with their understanding, and that's how we're going to fund it. And so we also utilized ARPA funds that we allocated for MVA. We had about $5 or $6 million for them, and so we gave them the ARPA funds for them to use for their operations. We took the HOT funds that we owed them, and we used that for travel bucks. When I mention travel bucks and trip, the travel resumption incentive program, travel bucks was part of that program. But yeah, you're right in terms of the actual funding for travel bucks. So in travel bucks, we send the money and wire the funds to the debit card processor company, and we utilize general funds for that.
Through the hot
Yes.
hotel occupancy. Okay, so clarified.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you for that clarification. Still in the ARPA topic, can you tell us how much was allocated for NGOs and NPOs?
Yes, for NGOs or nonprofits was $10 million.
$10 million. And was that broken down per fiscal year, or it was just 10 million for?
$10 million total. We had anticipated $4 million in FY 21
Oh, 20.
and $6 million in FY 2022. However, we did not give out $4 million in 20, so we wrote it over. So the total pot for nonprofits is $10 million,
Okay. And
or
out of,
that was our spending plan amount.
sure. Out of that 4 million, how much did you guys award?
In 2021, we awarded about $1 million awarded, not
Mhm.
issued out or transferred out. And we only had 2 nonprofits that we had assisted at that time. And that's why I know the numbers. However, in FY 2022, there's more than 15, 18 that we had awarded.
How much was it in 2022?
In 2022, I was just looking at, we had awarded, I can get back to you on
Okay.
that. I just was looking at that
Got it.
the other day.
So going back to the 4 million, you have awarded 1 million, of which only 2 recipients, right? And was there a reason why the other recipients didn't receive?
We were still waiting on guidance from U.S. Treasury how to do it. We were learning what we needed to do for nonprofits. There was no, at the time, there was no organization that we can, ask to help us with it. As an example, I don't want to veer off, but like, for example, the housing. We received in ARPA $10 million for housing assistance, homeowners housing assistance,
Okay.
or, they have the renter assistance and then we have the homeowners.
Mhm.
And on that, I asked NMHC if they can manage that program out of what we received. And so they are taking over that and operating that. In terms of nonprofit, there was no agency or company that at the time we can think of how to roll this out. We were trying to get guidance. We were getting guidance from U.S. Treasury. By the time we awarded and had an actual program and a process, an application process, knowing what to ask, what we needed to ask, and what were the requirements. By the time we did that, I don't think it was not enough time to give to all the nonprofits to submit all the required documents. And we had jumped the gun a little bit in with the 2 that we assisted because they had a lot of the early requirements we had, but we've vamped this program up. we're very proud of the process we have for the nonprofits requests.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So the out of the two awardees, it was a total of 1 million. Are you able to tell us who those
Yeah,
awardees are and how much they
I,
received?
we gave American Red Cross and we gave the Cancer Association. See about the cancer Commonwealth Cancer Association.
And how much?
Those were the two.
Respect.
Cancer Association was about 400,000, and I believe the Red Cross was over 500,000.
Okay. And then the 6 million, how much of that has been awarded?
I believe we've awarded close to total now close to $8 million.
8 million. So
I'm going because I was looking at this yesterday, so that's fresh. But I can give you a report on this. Be glad to share the report with the committee.
okay. Okay, we'll wait for that report then. So you started with $481.8 million in ARPA funds
Mhm.
received, right? And out of that, 348 million has already been committed, which leaves us with 133.8.
Mhm.
How much of that do you anticipate to use in funding 2023 operations?
I'll clarify. In this 348, I know this includes committing the personnel for FY 2023. I only have total amounts in front of me, so as we finalize our review and breakdown of all the ARPA funds, I will have a clearer or more detailed report to share.
Does that have any impact on your spending plan for ARPA? Initially, you guys had a spending plan, right, on how to use the money, but uh, are, did you guys deviate from the, are there any deviations from the spending
No,
plan?
there's no deviation outside of the two I mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so going back to the broadband, you said you got there's a approximately $14.2 million, right? And I thought I heard you mention Northern Islands.
Mm-hmm.
How much are you allocating for the Northern Islands,
Oh,
and for what purpose?
we don't have a detailed amount. We're including them in the plan. We opened up a broadband office, which is under the Planning and Development OPD office. We've hired a broadband director. I don't know what his position is, but he's a well-versed individual in the broadband scope. He's worked actually the last couple years with American Samoa with their broadband projects. We were able to pick him up, and he is along with working with he's going around to all the agencies. In fact, I believe there were having some public hearings on getting community support or ideas for broadband and what the input is from the community. Basically, to put together a broadband state plan, which we are including the Northern Islands. Now, what we have envisioned for the Northern Islands is to put up towers that can communicate and utilizing possibly satellite dishes, so to speak, that can communicate and get internet or even for communication purposes. So we're looking at that to expand our reach up there. So for safety, and it's always been part of Homeland Security's master plan to include the Northern Islands, at least one tower on each island, so that as boaters go north, they can have communication, mainly for two-way radio. But that's part of the overall broadband plan, including, I believe, three identified areas in the north, in the Marpi area for communication, and dead spot areas that we can also link up for both cellular and satellite. Among the goal is to be 100% cover 100% footprint on all three islands, and at least some some footprint going north.
Thank you for that. And you had mentioned the north side, Marpy. Are there any plans to also put some towers there? Because there are a lot of dead zones there and it's
Yes,
really
I think they identified 3 areas in Marpy for towers.
okay.
And bringing, and part of the, just so you can understand, when we're going north, we're looking at a kind of one dig program, meaning if we're digging up for water infrastructure, we're also going to lay down dark fiber, meaning we'll have fiber lines going through, whether it's if not live or active. So when we do need to activate fiber, uh, those are already in the ground, so to speak.
So you mentioned that you guys hired someone to put the master plan together. Are you able to tell us how much that cost?
Yeah, I think his contract is like, it was a 6-month contract for about 40,000, I think.
Oh.
And we're hoping in the 6 months that we get him on full time and not as a contract. But he's been coming. He's located right now in Hawaii, and then we're hoping that it transitioned him to come here full time,
So he's working out of Hawaii and doing the like
working on the master plan. But he's been on island several times already.
okay.
So he's coming back.
So
It's
he's
part of his
done some
contract.
assessment on island and making
Yes.
his evaluations.
Yes.
Okay. So can we go back to the Tinian utilities as I forgot who mentioned it, but apparently the municipality of Tinian were paying for their own utilities. And if indeed Tinian was paying for their own utilities out of their operational budget, will those amounts be returned back to them?
It's something like I mentioned. I will be contacting Tinian and discussing this. So those are options. I'll just have to make sure we got everything squared away.
Okay. Now we move on to the retirees 25%. I believe that was unfunded for this upcoming fiscal year. Any plans to allocate
I'm
some?
hopeful that we can generate casino BGRs. I know that there's discussions with a new investor with IPI and revamping the casino. Uh, that's all I have in hopes that I cannot bank on until that is inked and blessed by CCC. But I've been informed about the negotiations, and so that's hopeful for the 25%. Other than that, we don't have a funding source. I utilized CDL this fiscal year, the community disaster loan. I set aside the uh, $14 million for the 25%. Unless the legislature gives me flexibility to utilize funds to help in the 25%, or gives the governor that authority, then I will do my best to continue that. But in the meantime, I won't have authority to pay the 25% without any funding source.
Okay, so while we're in the retirees topics, I'm not sure if you're aware or your offices has been contacted by OPM, but apparently there's been some challenges paying out some of the WGIs because we took some money from the labs funding. No?
I worked it out with OPM. I think there was some misunderstanding. I took care of them. I also communicated with OMB. Whatever the issues were when I returned, we worked it out. So there's right.
Okay. And is the casino in Tinian like a new casino? The Diamond Tinian or?
No, they have a casino license, and maybe Congressman would have more information on that. But in Tinian, they can have up to 5 licenses, and I believe they're one of the holders of 5 license. So that's exciting too. But that doesn't go to that's not a casino BGR. That goes to the
Okay.
municipality of Tinian.
Darn.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And on the same topic with casino, What's the status on the tax lien with IPI, and how much is pending collection?
IPI has approximately $7 million still pending. Um, about 90% of that is penalties and interest. They have requested discussion on a payment plan with it. I kind of put that on hold, not on purpose. I wanted them to resolve their issues with their a lot of their issues that they have, and I didn't want to go into any negotiation. So it's pending. They still owe that, and I told them they needed to pay it, or else when they want to go back in operation, that will be a hindrance in them getting their license and their ability to reopen.
Okay. And last one. Um, what's the status on U2 vendors? Have they all been paid? Are you guys current with your U2
I
vendors?
believe I took care of all YouTube payments. I honestly haven't heard any requests for any YouTube payments for a while. When we received the community disaster loan, we shoot out close to 40 million in just back payments. If there's a vendor that hasn't been paid, then I haven't been informed.
Okay, sorry. One more. Promise. Was the CNMI able to monetize or receive any royalties from the Dear Meat for Dinner exposure?
No, I have not got any financial anything, no royalties. We don't have any agreement like that. If that's, I don't know if MVA does, but not the central government.
Okay, thank you for that. I yield.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Clarification on the 115 million projected. After just coming from a hearing with MVA, it seems like the arrivals, it's picking up in addition to all these additional airlines. And that's happening in the current fiscal year. Have those numbers been assessed for next fiscal year and how that would affect revenue?
Definitely. I am aware that pretty much all low-cost carriers of Korea has been granted access to fly to the Commonwealth. Whether they all, if we go back to pre-pandemic numbers, we could reach probably the similar numbers as Guam has received, since they were a model to that, having all the carriers being able to fly into Guam. We can anticipate a large number of tourists coming in from Korea. Those numbers were not fully taken in part of the revenues. We took a conservative look, and until we know and feel firm, I do not want to repeat what had happened in 2018 going into the 2019 budget, anticipating things that did not come to fruition. They anticipated cannabis being just basically taking off. They anticipated tourism to skyrocket and the casino industry bouncing back, even after U2. That didn't happen, and that was when I came in, I saw that and didn't understand why a projection was so high, considering the circumstances the Commonwealth was in, and therefore I would not repeat that, and I would just be conservative for now. If anything, Chairman, it'll be an opportunity next fiscal year to have a real, true supplemental, budget, appropriation.
Okay. Yeah, understood. Thank
Yeah.
you. I recognize Rep. Lizalma.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a few concern here. You mentioned about the Munis, and everybody was excited when that system came in. And it's supposed to be a good tracking system. And I'm tracking down a purchase order where someone has done a contract for me, and it's already 2 weeks. And the answer to that, or the reason for that, is that the person who's actually working on my account is not at work. probably on leave or on sick call. I mean, on sick leave. Do you have an alternative responsible person? Do we have to wait for that person to come back to process my
Mm, I
my?
apologize, Rep. Lizama. I don't think that's how the process is supposed to work.
Exactly.
Um, we have multiple people that can approve and make process documents
Okay.
that goes through Munis. Yes, we are. I am still excited about Munis,
Yes.
and I'm still excited about the the opportunity that this system will give us as a government, as a tool for you guys to see, being more transparent. You'll be able to track anything that you request for it and given access to. In your situation, I'm going to just apologize first, and if I can maybe offline talk, I want to know what the challenges are, like Rep. Babauta. I'll make sure we get training taken care of for the legislature.
Thank you. And we have the judiciary system. The judiciary personnel came in here and testified. There are a certain project that has been done, and the vendors are still waiting for the payments. What is the reason for that?
I did receive several closing requests for for the building project.
Mhm.
When we go through our last payment, we do tax clearance, and to ensure that before we give the final check, that they are all in compliant or they paid their taxes. It's a big project. We spent close to $7 million in revamping the judicial building. A little bit more than the actual budget,
Mm.
but worth it. And we worked with them. Um, I don't think it's a major delay. I'm hoping to resolve all that. In fact, just yesterday or the day before, I approved a couple of big payments already for the judicial.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. I hear back.
Thank you, Rep. Zama. Sorry, this was I had this when Vice Chair brought it up. The in regards to the retirement, and I know I brought this to your attention when we got the budget submission in April. Have you gotten clarification in regards to the payment schedule to the settlement fund? I know there's a
Yes,
$2
thank
million
you.
dollar
There is.
saving or money that we could appropriate.
So we do have clarification. It is that $2 million difference. And so when we do our revised budget,
So that would free up money
yes,
for local appropriations. Okay.
yes.
So I'm glad that's being addressed. Rep Camacho.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for your presence this afternoon. I just want to ask a follow-up question. A few months back, I believe I requested for an analysis of how much BGRT did we collect as a result of the first stimulus release, the local stimulus.
I know that you did ask that. It's hard for me to quantify or qualify the actual spend. We know we spent $24 million.
Yes.
We can assume at the low rate, let's say 3%. There's actually more just BGR, but there's also wage and salary that can benefit from that.
Yeah.
I will get back to you. I will talk to my team and get that something for you.
Thank you. And also, if you can also, I believe the second request I had was how much did we collect in BGR as a result of the travel bubble? Also, if you can just get that too. And then another last question, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, looking at your budget request. This is the analysis that was given to us by our budget analyst. It shows that you are requesting 20,384 from the local appropriation. Is that correct, or
I have
for fiscal year 2023? And then it shows that the governor The governor's proposal is at 5 million, which is a difference of 15 million.
No, our request was 10 million. Submission was 5 million. The governor's submission was 5 million. The bulk of this is in my IT department because we merged, we consolidated IT across the executive branch. Several people that were supposed to move to IT did not move, so they were reclassified different positions. So we're still in need of a lot of IT personnel. It's in the request. They will be funded if we're able to get these positions through ARPA, which will be showing in the submission, the July 1st submission.
Okay. Also, are we expected to have a cushion moving forward for fiscal year 2023 through the ARPA as a result of the what we are looking at, which is what it was 150 million for before earmarks? Are we expecting any furloughs or any that sort?
No, I'm not expecting any. You mean beyond 2023 or for
Yeah,
the next fiscal year?
Well, that would be a determinant of our economy at that
Mhm.
point, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, but for now, fiscal year 2023, we're fine. We're not looking
We're not in,
anticipating
yes, that's
any of that.
correct.
Okay, thank you for that. And also, how soon can we? Just for the general public that are listening, because I've been receiving a lot of messages that are kind of heartbreaking, where we have constituents that are their powers are being disconnected as a result of the rise in utilities. How soon can we expect the new stimulus cards that can possibly help them?
We anticipate to have the cards available as soon as June 20.
June 20.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rep. Camacho. Now going back to Rep. Camacho's question. So you said your request is around 10 million. That's exclusive of the IT, right?
No, our 10 million includes IT.
But IT alone is close to 11 million. 8 million for operations and 2.9 for personnel.
No, our request for IT is 2.9 million.
For
But
personnel
mhm.
and operations.
For operations, oh, I see what you mean. I stand to be corrected. Yeah, this is all FTE, and yeah, you're right. So of the 10 million requests for FTE, we're only funded on the governor's submission 5 million.
No, sorry. Operations for IT.
Operation
8 million.
8 million.
8.1. That's just IT alone. So your all other divisions is an additional 10 million.
That's correct.
So your total request is 20 million.
That's
around
correct.
20 million.
That's correct.
Um,
Could I expand?
sure. Yeah. I was gonna ask a follow up to that, but go ahead.
This is the true expense of what we most likely need in with our IT needs, and this is for government wide, including the legislature. What we include here is a government wide email system, a government wide cybersecurity plan, and cybersecurity mechanisms, boxes or units to protect government data and networks. And this also includes refreshing of IT equipment across government. And so that is the request. I don't expect that to be funded by general fund. It was submitted by our CIO. Now, we are funded along with ARPA, but we're also, some of this could be covered with our EDA grant that we received. we will make sure and ensure that the core systems and the core services are procured. We anticipate to have a IT funding model for FY 2023. Maybe something that we will definitely propose to the legislature to bless in some way of a cost allocation from every department, maybe based on FTE or based on a percentage. I mean, I know we're just talking about the OPA 1%, but it's similar to some kind of cost allocation that could be the true cost, or at least a contribution to the technology the Commonwealth needs, the government. Whether, and I think per FTE is a good model. We're looking at that, we're analyzing that. So we look at $8 million as an example, and we divide that among the 3,000 or so for FTE, and we're going to ask that every department puts their share per the number of FTE, because your FTE will have access to internet, will have access to emails, will have access to networks, and so forth, and some of the services. The cost of Munis, the cost of the servers, and we're trying to find out and outsource and look at different efficient systems and networks. Whether is it cheaper to go out in the cloud? We're starting that process. We got a subscription to Office 365 Government, specifically for government employees and agencies. And so we're setting up the framework and the infrastructure for a solid IT program for the whole Commonwealth government. And so that's probably your true cost at this moment. I don't expect the general fund to fund that.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. And this brings me to my next question in regards to your FTE request. IT being one of the biggest asks. And then we have revenue and tax, rev and tax up next at 17. 65. These positions that you're asking for, you know, these are positions that you need permanently and not something that for the meantime could be funded through ARPA. You're talking about establishing a new division where 60 employees. Would these 60 FTEs be new FTEs, or the ones that you'll be transferring over from the other agencies that you mentioned?
That is 60 FTEs we need to operate efficiently. The CIO and the assistant CIO have put together a organizational chart and a program for the needs that we have. Now, the 12 you're probably seeing is what we currently have that's already on the general fund, and mainly the carryover of the former, as we call it, EDP. And they just dealt with only finance. Now we're dealing with every department. We're providing IT services to every government office, and to include you guys if you need assistance. We've been helping judiciary as they get through the different systems, but those are the positions we need. We have those. We have about, I know we have more than 12 at IT right now. We had about maybe 4 or 5 transferred from other department based on the directive, the executive order that the governor signed to merge and consolidate our IT operations. We're still working with those to transfer over and transition out and come in with OIT. In terms of rev and tax, these are people that we already have on board. They're already funded currently under ARPA, not ARPA from the state, but ARPA through the tax We get an indirect cost allocation from the child tax and the EITC program that's through ARPA program, and they're already funded. Um, there's also some positions that obviously I'm looking and wanting to fill more, hire more tax auditors, as we call them right now, exams section, because we need to. We have an uptake in, as to say, cases of tax investigations that we have with several businesses in the Commonwealth, and so I wanted to boost that program up. You know, in the past, people had said, "Well, you know, we need to enforce. We need to enforce." It's really, I just need more auditors to analyze tax submissions and seeing if those um, are accurate and analyzed. We also have a revenue management information systems upgrade. We just contracted out a vendor to um, update, upgrade, and revamp our tax software. And so we're looking for that to be go live in February of 2022, in the hopes that this new system can help with our audit examination division or section to analyze and see trends of taxpayers' submissions and so forth, as well as provide better services, online services. We're hoping um, that taxpayers can file their 1040s, you know, online, along with, I mean, currently corporations and companies can pay online, pay their BGRs online, but now we're taking that next step to allow for taxpayers to submit their applications online, their refunds. And a component of the revenue management information system is for taxpayers to have access to their tax documents. And so we'll have that available hopefully after the implementation and the go live of our new revenue management system. That system is funded by a TAP grant that we applied for with OIA. And so we're blessed with that funding. It's not the full funding needs, but we have we have an additional TAP grant request for it in the works, and hopefully get funded in the next several months if we hear back from OIA. But the staffing there is current staffing that I think we just put the total number of staff at Rev and Tax, and hope that general funds can pick that up. But I don't anticipate to.
But these are current employees
Yes,
already.
at the
We're
Rev and
just trying
Tax
to get them.
is yes. At the OIT, I don't have 60 at OIT. I think that's the request, but for Rev and Tax, that's the number. We have a new call center. We have 4 people manning phones with and we had a contract with IT&E to work the phone system. So we have a system that when people call, that it doesn't just keep ringing. And we're trying to improve our customer service aspects, especially with a lot of stimulus, child tax credits, and all EITC. A lot of questions and a lot of people inquiring about their status. Um, I know there's an increase also at financial services, and this is also just so we can get people to get things processed quicker, hopefully. And until we get Munis 100% working and flowing the way it's supposed to, I can anticipate those numbers possibly going down a little bit, but not much. And including in my office, I have probably 5 or 6 additional people in my office, but they're funded by ARPA because they're handling ARPA. Um, their role is strictly to work with the ARPA requests and programs that we have, and so they work as a team. I have one that's stationed in Rhoda to take care of ARPA needs, and we can communicate. And then we have one for Tinian, although she's stationed here, but she's making sure Tinian is taken care of with ARPA, as well as just the overall ARPA program. I have about 6 or 7 people working under the ARPA program, under my office.
Okay. That's good to hear. As long as I did notice the change in the phone system and Revenue Tax, but I think even with this number in queue, someone who's number one in queue can still be there for 1 hour waiting.
Oh,
to
I
be
hope
called.
not.
But so customs and quarantine, the additional FTEs, would
Oh.
this be inclusive of the academy that's going on right
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
that includes, and including what we've done at Customs and Quarantine is we've merged the two, we call them biosecurity now. But we've merged not just the former two divisions together, but we merged the roles of quarantine officers and customs officers. We want them to be knowledgeable on both sides. Of course, we have in the quarantine side, we have administrative and people that are really knowledgeable about quarantine laws that are not officers that stick with quarantine, as well as customs. We have the customs administration. But as far as the officers are concerned, we have several of the quarantine officers that were former quarantine officers in the academy so that they can learn about customs and vice versa. They already knew and had ideas of the roles of both areas, but now we're formalizing it and getting them equal training for both sides. Custom officers need to learn the details of the quarantine side and vice versa.
I have more along these lines, but Rep Jewel, you had a clarifying question.
Yes, please, just real quick. This also for the general public. I don't know if this ever been addressed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if it's ever been addressed, so forgive my ignorance, but this is in regards to the last stimulus cards that came out. Sorry, it just crossed my mind, Mr. Chairman, but uh, a lot of these people and I've encountered some of them where the card shows that it expires in 2023, but the funds are no longer available. Is there a reason for that? Or?
Yes, when we implemented I did share this earlier.
Oh,
When we
sorry,
did-
I was
When we did implement the program, we had a program expiration date, and then we also had a. We've tried to share this. I think we could have done a better job, and in the meantime, there are several taxpayers that did not utilize their cards, and we are working out this, trying to see how we can help them. In the meantime, our focus was to get the second stimulus out,
Mhm.
and so that's where we're at. Director Tracy Norita will be back on island next week, and we're going to continue the discussion. Of course, I did share that there was close to $2 million unused in the first stimulus. And so those just reverted back into the pot.
Okay.
And then we'll go ahead and try to see how we can help these taxpayers. Honestly speaking, I was surprised. I mean, guess they didn't really need to be stimulated, I guess. But no, the cards had a different expiration than the program. Yes,
I
that's
see.
true.
Okay. So I guess that was a misunderstanding of some of them.
Yeah.
They were thinking that they could spend it next fiscal year or whatnot. And last question, Mr. Chairman, if I may. I'm just wondering, Council, are we still under emergency declaration right now?
No,
We're no longer in emergency.
no, no,
We're not
no.
anymore.
We haven't received any renewal, so
Okay. I just wanted to check. Because if we were, I was going to ask if we were still under emergency procurement and all of that. So apparently we're not. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you, Rep Camacho. Going back to the FTE discussion. The passport office. Any? I know I briefly spoke to the acting um, a few weeks back, but I just wanted to see how can the passport office beef up its personnel or even get people certified to approve passports, because this is such a it's a burden to the people of Rota that would have to fly up here or wait a whole month or 2 months just to get a representative from the passport office to come down to Rota, or for them paying all these fees, or the cost of having to fly here to meet with the passport office. Is that something that your office can try to seek assistance from Hawaii, or trying to get more people certified to accept applications and process applications?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We are adding, we're hopeful that we have currently 4 people working, and we're hopeful that we can add a couple more people to the passport office. That way they can have personnel that can make routine visits to both Rhoda and Tinian to take up application. Now, the passport rules that we're binded by is very strict, in the sense that if we pick up an application, we have to have that application in the mail by the end of the day. And therefore, what we've done is, our passport office, for example, is open from 7:30 to 3, because then we process what we've received in the day and coordinate with with FedEx or UPS to pick it up and send it. So we can't, if we accept it, we cannot, we have to submit and send it out. And so we do that in Rhoda as well, and in Tinian. If we pick up, we go to the post office and mail it out that day. But we are able to certify and clear those applications. But if we add a couple more people, I think we can make more routine stops to both Rhoda and Tinian. I know both mayors make requests often, especially like when there's times like, let's say, the baseball team, or there's a group of students gonna go off
Yeah.
island, and parents that will accompany them. They make requests that some of them may not have passports, if we can make a visit and process. So we'll continue to meet the needs of Rhoda and Tinian as best as we can. But I think, to your question on FTEs, yes, we're hopeful we can hire 2 more. And when we do, we can make more routine visits.
So that would be the 2 additional requests
Yes.
that's in your proposal.
And they can be funded. It's hiring people, and then they have to go through the passport exams, so to be certified. This is through U.S. Passport Hawaii office, and so we've had some, and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
So we're back to.
Okay, understood. Thank
Yeah.
you. And just one more thing that I wanted to bring up, because it was brought up in Tinian, is that the support that they need for IT, again, it seems to be, the burden seems to be on the department to get support from IT to send over IT personnel to take care of some IT related business within the department. And so I know that for the current fiscal year, the IT office was one of the divisions that was funded the most. And so it's just, I guess, just making the request to extend services to Rhoda, or to Tinian for that matter, under the department's budget, seeing as how this will now be the main agency handling all technology issues. And so I just wanted to bring that up because it was brought up in Tinian. And so I just wanted to share that with you. I recognize the vice chair.
Thank you, Chair. And just in line with what with the chairman said about the IT, I believe, if I recall correctly, Tinian said that when they request for IT assistance from Saipan, that they would have to absorb those expenses themselves. Is that correct?
I think we have to look at not generally. I think if we need to look at what the actual what the request is. I believe I'm aware of a request that was asked, and we just didn't have the staffing to send to rewire a facility with their IT cabling and everything. So we asked that we can recommend a outsource like SuperTech or Megabyte to do what they're asking, because that's like a 3-day project to pull wire and wire a new office. So several offices moved in Tinian to a new facility, and that was the request. Of course, they needed that to be done for obviously for Munis, internet, um, telephone, and so we just didn't have the manpower to meet their needs and the timeline that they have. So I believe we asked that they outsource it. Generally speaking, and in finance, I ensure that obviously we're finance, and that's an important function in our government. I make sure that the finance office is wired, and we've done rewiring, and we've had some challenges and different, in buildings that needed is not as up to par, meaning that we got some leaks and we got some issues that can make IT wiring have some challenges. So, nonetheless, we work with them. We work with the mayor's office very closely, especially Tinian. And I know I'll be meeting with the mayor on Friday morning talking about different issues with Rhoda.
Thank you for that clarification. Still under FTE, so under finance and accounting, I believe you currently have 19 positions, right? And are all 19 positions filled, or do you have any vacancies?
Oh, no, they're filled. I think we have more than 19, and we have several that are funded under ARPA.
Are any of the filled vacancies being occupied by an acting capacity?
Not at financial services.
What about in any departments under your?
I still have an acting director for procurement, and that's just being basically paperwork and processing, which I'm working on to finalize
Okay.
as we speak. Yeah.
And how long has that person been in acting capacity?
You talking procurement?
How many acting
I
directors
only,
do you have? Just one?
I only have one acting. Yeah.
So how long has that person been in?
It's
acting
been a
capacity?
couple years.
Is that person in acting capacity receiving the salary for the acting?
No, he's currently um, his actual title is it's a deputy position. Deputy. He was hired when our former director was still on sick leave prior to his passing. Bless his heart. But we could not fill or hire a director because he still filled it, and it was a civil service position. So he is a deputy director, classified, and
Are there any
civil service.
Okay, so are there any plans to fill the director?
Yes, there is. Actually, there was a search and a completion of and a recommendation. It's just it's a process I'm going through to ensure that he's compensated at the maximum that we can allow.
Okay.
And that's kind of been the delay.
So the acting director, I'm just trying to understand, because normally when someone is in an acting capacity, after 90 days they start receiving the salary of the acting pay. And I think I just asked you if that person was receiving the acting pay and you said no, and it's
No.
been 2 years. So are there any conflict or violations
No.
of labor? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Well, Secretary, we approached the 2 hour mark. We will try to wrap up in the next 15 minutes. But I will close it out with two more members, Rep. Selena and then Rep. Sablon. But at this time, would you need any break or shall we
No.
finish up? Okay. So we'll close out with Rep. Selena, followed by Rep. Sablon, and then and so at
Do you
this
need a
time.
break?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have very short questions and comments. Why didn't the other branches receive ARPA funds in this proposed budget?
Can you repeat the question?
Why didn't the other branches of government, the legislature and the judiciary, receive any ARPA funding for the upcoming fiscal year?
Oh, I wasn't aware that no ARPA was allocated to the legislature or the judicial. I think what we did is submit ARPA for the salaries portion. I think that was the main submission. And that in July 1, we were going to submit the provisions of government, ARPA, mainly for all the other areas, all others.
Okay. I hope that in the July 1st amended submission, I would like to see funding for the other branches. Same, if at the very least, same level of funding as what we got in FY 2022. I would also like to see yesterday we had the judiciary and they're having, the judiciary is having heartburn right now because of a $400,000 debt to CUC they owe. And I'd like to see, when the CNMI received the ARPA funding, the 481 million, within a few days, Department of Finance cut a check to CUC to settle all the government's debts, I think including in the municipalities, if I'm not mistaken, and including the private residence of Governor Ralph Torres in the amount of $95,000 was included in that $5 million check. And we're talking about judiciary, a government agency here, whose debt to CEC now is upwards of $400,000, according to them yesterday during their budget hearing. So I hope that with the July 1st submission, this will be taken care of and settled, and as well as their now over, something to the tune of over $700,000 in vendors that are owed, and this is pertaining to their HVAC system. And according to the judiciary, they still owe vendors $700,000, and there's a delay. That's where the delay they mentioned, that there's a delay between the processing with finance and getting their vendors paid. Vendors are calling their offices, hoping to get some kind of payment. So I hope in the July 1st submission that we are anticipating, that these will be reflected and cleared with whatever funds are available, because we face the tough job of having to take away from an agency and trying to fund other critical agencies. So I hope the legislative branch and the judiciary branch are considered in the next submission on July 1st. That's all I have.
If I may, Chairman, uh, Rep. Babauta, for the judicial vendor payments, I believe I know I signed off on one a day or two ago. Those 700 some thousand should be resolved before the end of the fiscal year. So it will not reflect in the July 1 submission because that's for next fiscal year. And then, like I mentioned to Congressman Lizama, some of these are final payments, and we do due diligence to make sure that tax clearance is done with that vendor, and that before we give them a final check, that they're to date with their taxes. And so that could cause some of the delay. I don't think it's a delay in due to funding.
Thank you.
Rep. Blanc.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that my next few questions can be answered fairly quickly, Secretary. One is, would you clarify, are public funds being used to pay for the governor's criminal defense attorneys as well?
I believe, I am not 100% sure. I'm aware of the contracts that has gone through during the JGO slash impeachment trial was paid with public
Right. Well,
funds.
those we're aware of, but for the criminal case that was filed by the Attorney General.
I'm not familiar with I haven't seen a contract
Okay.
for that.
Okay. Thank you. And I guess when you respond to Rep. Abata's
I will
request,
look
then we
for
will
whatever contracts we
verify.
have on file and
Thank you.
get that to you. Yes.
Okay, and then my next question, you mentioned the small business assistance funds that will be rolling out soon. Is that Commerce that is distributing those funds?
Yeah, no, it's not actually Commerce. And I share that we have a month. We're working with, we're going to work with the banks
Oh,
to help
okay.
assist.
Okay,
And Commerce, myself, and the administration, we're working on this project together.
okay,
So myself and Secretary Guerrero are working on this because we're also wanting to help local nonprofits, that because in the ARPA nonprofit section, it's very straight and clear. You have to be IRS 501 C3. In this boost program, we're including a program for local nonprofits that
okay,
are not. That's one. And we're working along with Commerce, and we're working with, we're hoping to work with actually all the banks locally to get multiple areas to help fund or help small businesses in our community with possibly their clients and also future clients.
And
that
this
they
is
can
for
help.
the forgivable loans?
This is for
the-
that, yes.
Okay, and so when Secretary Guerrero was here from Commerce just a couple weeks ago, he mentioned that there would be the small business assistance program rolling out first for COVID impacts. Is that the same pot
Yes.
of money we're talking about?
We're
Okay.
talking the programs,
you.
yes.
Okay, great. And then on the issue of nonprofits who have had funds awarded but have not actually received them, why haven't they received them yet?
There are some organizations that have submitted. It is with, it has been vetted, and it is with the governor for his approval.
Okay, so that's what's
That's
pending.
where, yeah.
And how is finance communicating with all the other applicants about the status of their applications?
I have a person, I know I have one dedicated person that deals with nonprofit, is the go-to person in my ARPA team, and they're in communication with them. Unfortunately, yes, there's some that are still awaiting the confirmation. But I think we're in good communication. I don't think we're not ignoring.
Yeah, well, we're
but-
getting inquiries from nonprofits asking for assistance.
I'm sure they're
and following
asking.
up, right?
I'm sure they're asking, and
yeah.
but it's not because it's our lack of communication.
Mm-hmm.
It is sitting with the governor, and I think I've also shared with a couple organizations that to see and seek out the attention of the governor to speed the process.
Okay, thank you. And then what is the status of the household cash assistance program that DCCA recently announced?
Oh, I'm not familiar with
through
that program.
Division of Youth Services.
Unless they have, unless it's a direct like grant that they receive outside of ARPA, in terms of outside of the state assistance program, the 481, and
Okay.
because their ARPA was a huge bill, right?
Mhm.
And some departments can avail of different programs in ARPA
Mhm.
for them.
Okay, so that wasn't one of
It wasn't
your,
from
your
c-
programs.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then of the 300 new FTEs that the administration requested to be funded through ARPA and for various departments and agencies in this fiscal year, how many of those vacant FTEs were actually filled?
Vacant of the 300.
Of the 300 new FTEs that were
Oh,
requested.
I will get back to you on that
Okay,
one.
thank you. And then are we current in ASC trust payments?
Yes, we are. I understand there was a concern from several. I mean, it's not just one. There was three pending claimants or beneficiaries, and the way the process works is we submit wherein there's a gap of like two pay periods that is not entered from the headquarters. So there's this when we issue out payroll, we're issuing payroll for something that was like almost 2.5 weeks ago,
Mhm.
but we're collecting the monies now. When we send payments to our group life insurance agency, and then there's like a two pay period gap in the records.
Mhm.
We're up to date. We're required to make sure we pay within the month. So if we get this pay period, we collect the money. We need to make the payment to the group life insurance program within before two pay periods come.
Mhm.
So there's that
Okay, so you're referring to the GHLI.
GLHI.
Okay,
Yes.
so we are for the most part current with GHLI,
Yes.
and then with ASC Trust, like for the DC
Oh,
plan.
trust. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're right. I
Yeah,
apologize.
I was going to ask about both, so
Okay.
it's fine.
Same thing
Same
with the
thing, okay.
trust. The same thing, including our medical,
Okay,
health.
okay. And then, as you may be aware, there have been inquiries about life insurance
Yes,
payouts, and
and
so
that's what
that's what that gap is. Okay, but
Mhm.
you're addressing that.
Yes.
Got it.
And I inquired, especially since this was brought to my attention early this week, about some pending beneficiaries not receiving yet. And so when I inquired all the way up the chain to headquarters, I did receive communication early this morning, and hopefully that's relayed to these families that are waiting. But I question the gap, and so now it's brought to my attention on why this gap, and I hope to find out and get more clarification, hopefully in another meeting, or I can share with you when I get more information. But I think that process needs to improve.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And then just a couple more here. What is the status of the single audit for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 is coming up, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're on the final leg of closing out. We just had to our 2021 audit is there's only one item that's still pending, or I shouldn't say pending. We're complete. It's just for our auditors to be satisfied with finances answers, and it has to do with the CARES Act.
Okay.
They're asking for some documents that I have never received, like CDFA numbers or CDMA numbers. When we received CARES Act, it wasn't like a grant I applied for and that I was issued a grant award. I just received the money,
Mhm.
so to speak, based on the law, right through U.S. Treasury. So that's still kind of a before. I don't want it to be a question
Mhm.
question item. So once we finalize that, I believe then it gives the auditors a couple weeks to finalize their audit for the 2021, and we should get that out.
Okay.
My hope is before the end of the month.
Okay.
Now, leading to 2022, right after they issue that out, they're jumping right into the 2022. And I've asked them if they can also kind of speed up. As they were doing 21, they were kind of also looking at 2022. We have a contract with them for the a 3-year period. So they've, in a sense, has started on the 2022, like a lot of the preliminary works that needs to be done.
Mhm.
Treasury numbers, treasury checks, numbering, and things with the treasury division. And so they've kind of started already.
Yeah. Do you expect to
Nothing.
request or to have to request an extension then?
I
Again?
hope not.
Okay.
My hope is for them, hopefully, because the issues that are coming up in 21 will be very similar for 2022.
Mhm.
And so I'm hoping that it speeds up the auditors, and I'm hopeful that we can, if needed, add more resources to get it. I hate being late 2 years in a row.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. It's just to clarify. So it's actually for fiscal year 2020 and
Mhm.
2021
Yeah.
that we're looking at. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for updating us on that.
And we're working very closely also. The OPA is assigned a couple staff to help us too,
Mhm.
because they're concerned and wanting us to get the
Sure.
single audit out. So,
Okay.
and they're also jumping into the 2021. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, thank you. And then next is, has the Inspector General notified the administration that a review of federal funds received and expended is now underway?
I have a what do you call it? An entrance interview where they're looking into the CARES Act.
Okay.
So we have a like a kickoff meeting on the 13 or 14
Of this month?
of this month.
Okay.
The Inspector General has hired a external company to audit us with the CARES Act,
Okay.
and so we're ready. We're
Mhm.
prepared to enter into this agreement. We are including OPA in this,
Okay.
as well as our staff, to make sure that whatever documents they want to see or do
Yeah.
will be
So just the CARES Act then is under
is what I
review.
is all I'm aware of.
Could you provide this committee with a copy of
Sure.
that letter? Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. And then, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I guess my last, it's not really a question, just a couple of comments. I am glad, Mr. Secretary, that a second stimulus is being issued. I know a lot of people need it, but I do want to register my disappointment and the disappointment that I'm hearing from constituents that the administration is opting once again for debit cards. Because the cards were found to have really limited people's options to just businesses that accept the cards. Generally, they can't be used for rent. They can't be used for medical referral needs. And then there are, as you know, these overhead costs and inconveniences to the user that we heard about from many people, not least of which is the loss of funds because people didn't realize that the funds were going to lapse. So has a contract already been signed with the vendor to reissue these cards? Is it too late to reconsider going the debit card route again?
I should just say the cards are on the way.
Okay.
So it is too late to veer off from that. Actually, the cards are literally on its way.
Okay.
Um,
And same vendor,
Yes.
same amount. Was it like about $2 million the last time?
2 minutes from the last stimulus.
Right.
This first major batch is about $17 million.
Okay.
But we anticipate several $1 million more. So when zero income filers submit, they'll be qualified for a stimulus
Mm-hmm.
card.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then my final comments, there have been quite a few glitches with the rollout of the Munis system, and you heard all about them from my colleagues. So I'm not going to repeat that, but I do want to just express my appreciation for how helpful I have found your staff that I've had to, who've been so patient in walking me through my confusion and just helping to troubleshoot. I just want to give a special shout out to Daryl. Most recently. So, I do recognize that change is sometimes hard, and that there will be some adjustments in this process. But I'm very glad that we are moving to online processes, and that you'll soon be allowing business license applications and then permitting applications to be done online, and that would include payments, I assume.
That's correct.
Okay, that's great. And the audits that you mentioned are underway now. I fully support them for these businesses, the tax audits. When do you expect those to be completed?
No, it
It's
continues.
just an ongoing.
I just need
okay.
more so I can do more.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And are these on particular sectors that you're
Mainly in the
auditing, or-
retail,
Okay.
you know, we do spot audits. We or if we get tips, and then we look into it, and if we see if it's um, worth our time to look into it.
Mhm.
And some cases, literally cases, take a few months to resolve, and then get to a figure that we feel maybe a particular taxpayer wasn't paying properly.
Mhm.
And so the burden will be on the taxpayer to prove
Okay.
that we're wrong, because there's laws that says that you must keep records
Yeah.
for certain many years. And
Well, I'm
things like
really
that.
glad to hear that you're also moving to make tax records available to the taxpayers online, just more readily available, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rep. Sablon. We'll take one more, and then I'll close out. So, Rep. Vicente Camacho.
Thank you, Chair. How you doing there? One quick question. Do you by chance know who is funding security and customs services at the airport?
Security customs at the airport? Providing security for customs?
Customs services for checking in passengers
Hmm.
and these services out there.
CPA has their own police force. So CPA does their own patrolling in their properties. Customs is there. We are able to enforce and support CPA if needed. I mean, we're certified to be armed and can as law enforcers, but we usually just deal strictly with incoming passengers. We don't deal with any enforcement of any laws within the CPA property. That would be CPA Ports Police for both seaport and airport.
So CPA
Yeah.
funds that.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Camacho. Let me just close out with this new thing that's going around, the P cards and the travel cards. I know there are several questions in regards to P cards in the sense that um, now people can just use the cards, but what safeguards are in place to ensure that Rep. Selena doesn't go beyond what's allowed, or more than what is budgeted for? How does that truly work? And is there a credit limit that is, and how can we access what has already been spent? Will it be reflected in Munis, etc.? If that's something that you can clarify.
Yes. Actually, I'm very excited about this program. Um, P cards, short for P for procurement cards. I know some in my office, they're calling it expense card versus travel card, but they're all both the same. They're a credit card in the form of a credit card, but it is a program that's controlled by us, Department of Finance. So we set the limits, we set the parameters on what can be spent on it, and how it can be spent. Meaning, if you get a travel card, it can be only used on airlines, hotels, rent-a-cars, gas station, restaurants, and that's it. It's strict. It is, and I tested it. I was able to test it on my last trip. You can take it to a department store, it will decline. I went and got a haircut. I tried to use it. It got declined. But if I go to a restaurant, it will approve. So it's to replace the burden and help our casino my travelers not be burdened by deposits required for renting a car or deposits on hotel rooms when we only give you per diem for that amount. So a traveler will be issued a travel card. They will be trained and they will need to sign a very strict agreement stating that if you overspend your approved per diem amount, you are 100% liable for that amount. And if you don't pay, your next payroll and the full amount will be taken out. And this is to prevent you from overspending. If it takes the next two pay periods, then we're going to have to do that. They're aware before they even get the card. So it's you can go and rent a car if you're authorized to rent a car, and you won't have to put a deposit. Your hotels, wherever you stay, you don't have to put a deposit. Can you spend more than your TA amount? Yes, you can, but you will be responsible for the overage when you do your travel voucher. And you pretty much have 45 days after your trip to resolve that. And then if not, we will be taking the full amount on the paycheck. That's for the personal. The travel cards will be in the traveler's name. And so they're going to be fully responsible. The expense cards.
Sorry. Before we proceed to expense card, so with the traveler card, so obviously the overage would be the security hold that they'll place from car rental or hotel for the security deposit, or like with car rental, the extra amount that they add on top of what the full rental car cost would be.
No, that won't be charged to the traveler. It's because it will clear. It will
Right,
clear
right.
within the next.
Okay, yeah, that was my understanding. And then what would happen with allotted per diem that doesn't get used?
Good question. So in the news, in our munis through employee expense, I think the staff should be aware or should know how to enter in the request for a TA. It's an employee expense. So you're allotted $200, let's say, for per diem, but you only used 50. When you close out your TA voucher, we're going to owe you that 150 because you only used 50 of your allotted per diem. That amount will be reimbursed to the traveler in their next payroll. That's how it's going to work. That's why they have to close out their TA in employee expense, and then any due to employee will be returned to the employee. Anything due more than the amount, then that's going to go against the paycheck.
Right. Can they withdraw cash out of the?
No, we didn't allow for that.
Okay.
It's a program that is doable, but we did not allow that.
Okay. So even we can't check balances or anything like that. We just have to. Keep
No,
track
you
of
can
the
you should have access to online with FHB. You can see what charges you charged.
Okay. You got a clarifying question? Sure.
So just real quick to clarify, typically when companies issue P cards or travel cards, right, you have an administrator that oversees those cards, and they're actually able to go in and review the transactions to ensure that, you have proper charges on there. Now, are you saying that someone from your department is going to be facilitating that and
Yes.
reconciling?
Yes, I have 3 people assigned to that, and 1 is focused on travel and 2 on expense cards.
And that's how they would know whether or not you have a due to or due from.
Yes, and
card
they're
holder.
monitoring daily.
And
They
so,
see every charge.
got it. And so essentially this card is a credit card. And so they are actually applying under their name, right? Because the card will be issued under
For travel.
For travel. And
Expenses under the division, the department's name.
and then they're fully aware that because it is a credit card that if they are delinquent in their payments, that it does affect their credit scores? And
No, it will not affect any employee's credit score. It is not it is a credit card, but the back end of it is not a credit card like the credit card traditional program. It's more almost kind of like a um, declining balance card. So we put a balance amount or credit or prepaid, but we can up it and lower it. It will not, it has to equal the amount of your allotment for the expense. For the traveler, depending on where they're going and how much, the default is $5,000. But if we see that we're issuing you a card and you're just going to Rhoda, uh, we can reduce it to just 1,000 or whatever, because we have to leave available amounts for any possible um, deposits, let's say on rental cars or hotels, and the ability to be flexible for, let's say, if a trip needs to be extended, and for, let's say, and it has to be approved. And so if a trip is extended, then we can extend the credit. Um, and it's just easier, and it makes sense that if we're sending staff or officials on behalf of the Commonwealth, that they're not personally burdened to go to a training because we're not giving them the extra for the deposit, or it takes up from their per diem. Now they have less to eat or buy gas, whatever the case may be. We're making sure that they are taken care of if we're sending them on an official travel, and that's the purpose of that.
okay, so although the card is under their name, is the government liable for any?
The government
should
is
they not
liable
pay
for it.
anything?
We are.
The government is
The
liable.
government is liable.
So what are the consequences if an employee should,
Overspend?
abuse or?
Yes.
That's zero
Immediately, it will be taken out of their check, the full amount.
That's it?
Multiple checks if we can. If not, then subject to termination. Because
What about if they repeatedly abuse the?
we will know that, and we can control that. We can control the use of the cards and how they're used.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification on the travel card. And now you were going to talk about the expense card.
Yes, the expense card. So the expense card works. It's like a open PO, so to speak, on a card. It's only for operational costs. So you need a pen, a box of pens. We don't need to go through the system to go do a PO for National Office or Modern or Joe 10 or wherever, just to get so that you can go get pen. You can just go get the box of pens and use your card. When you get back into the office, you will be trained. The staff should be trained on going back and uploading the receipt. What's the business purpose and what account code, whether it's office supply or whatever category, in the account codes, and then apply that and upload that all up into Munis. And then when that is done, then we will make sure we pay it. If it's an amount that is unauthorized, we will know too, because we're monitoring the use of the cards. If it's unauthorized, we will inform the expenditure authority of the unauthorized amount, and that amount needs to be resolved um, as soon as possible, whether it's a payment to Treasury to take care of that unused, and a warning, and maybe the privilege of not being able to have an expense card. The purpose of the expense card is to be more efficient and monitor and control open POs. I've stopped the traditional open PO purchase amounts to a particular for Ace Hardware. If you need things at Ace Hardware, well, you have a card. We will see the actual transaction. You have to upload and explain what you spent it on and what account number. And if you're not budgeted in that account code area, then we need to be reconciled. It helps us monitor, helps us control, and we can limit the amounts. We can limit the number of times the card is used per day. We can limit the amount total amount per person, per week, per day, per week, per month. We can control that. And the number one thing is we cannot give you a credit limit more than your budgeted amount for that, for office, for all others. And so this can't, we will restrict the cards from being able to use it at gas stations. We can stick it only on general office or general retail establishments. You won't be able to use it at restaurants unless there's special permissions from the department requesting a use of a P card for, let's say, you know, there's a operation let's say the drug task force, they need to feed the workers, I mean, the officers. We can probably give them a card they can use that at a restaurant to buy, but they'll be monitored. We can see what they ordered, or not necessarily what they ordered, what was charged. And they have to upload every receipt. A missing receipt will go against the charger. So even the person charging for the department will need to be trained and sign an agreement that you are responsible. You're so-called the office administrator for that card. You got to treat that card with your life then. But it allows departments to be more efficient and speed up process. We don't need to have these open accounts and then close out, have big, encumbrances. We have a lot of open POs that, they $1,000, but they only use 800. They never share with us that we were waiting for $200 more receipts. Maybe they spent it, but they don't have the receipts. So all these issues that we've had in the past, this will help resolve all that. It is something that I've been using the last 12 years. I was out off island, when I left Saipan and worked in Oregon and in San Diego, California. I've always been using P cards and travel cards. It's nothing new. I know this program very well and how we can control and monitor expenses. And if a department abuses it, whether it's the employee abuses it, it's subject to termination, subject to hitting their payroll and so forth. But it's more to help departments be more efficient, and even yourselves. If whether it's your travel card or your office expense cards, if we know what you're using it for, and your rules allow for it, we can definitely open it up for you guys so you're flexible. You don't have to go through and cut POs to different vendors. You can go straight to the vendor and charge it. Just make sure the receipts are uploaded and accounted for.
Mr. Chairman, if I can ask a question regarding that.
Yeah.
So what I've realized too, like after Super Typhoon U2, was that a lot of these vendors stopped taking government POs. So would this allow us to, like, for example, like if we want to make an office donation to like a youth center, we want to buy balls from or whatever sporting equipment from, like, say, fishing tackle or whatever. Now that's gonna allow us to do that, to make those purchases.
You can purchase it from them. They cannot stop you because it's a credit card. It's not a PO. If they say we don't take open POs from the government, well, I mean, they have no choice. This is a card. It's not a PO.
So that's just it falls under the employer's responsibility to upload the receipts.
Yes, and account for every penny charged to that account.
Okay, so if we buy a set of balls, then we just say, "Oh, we donated this to a youth center or whatever, the school."
Yes.
Wow.
So the P card is for every single employee or only the expenditure of these accounts?
No,
Authorized
a
expenditure.
P card is for the department.
Head or whoever's
Yeah, or
authorized.
whoever authorized their division to have a card, but they're the ones that are going to be responsible for, they're the ones that buys the office
Right.
supplies.
Well, so like we would send our staff to use our card
Yeah.
at these, but then the travel card is every single employee
individual. It's by
will
individual.
get their travel card.
Mhm.
So you mentioned something too about we need special permission, for example, like for food or whatever. Like, because one thing that I do for my office is I purchase lunch sometimes for my staff,
Mhm.
and I keep the receipt, obviously.
Yeah,
that's
so
purchased through
for your
subsistence or-
office, you'll need to submit a request for an exception to the general rule we have for expenses. we can open it up. Right now, we lock it in to just, we lock out, and basically you can try to use it. These P cards, or these cards, are managed by a merchant, what they call MCC, a merchant credit um, code. And so if you're a business that's a flower shop, you have a code. So when you charge, it shows it's to a floral shop.
So
If you're so
will your office though be working with like OPA with regarding the like, expenses and the receipts? Like who tracks that?
it's our office will track it and monitor it. OPA is welcome to audit it. Um, we make sure that you follow the rules of procurement in these small purchases. This is only for small purchase items. You can't go and use this card to purchase a vehicle. You can't use this to gas. You can't use this to, in your case, you won't, generally speaking, you won't be able to use it at restaurants or any retail establishment that is not approved in the merchant codes.
So a good example would be like Ace Hardware. It's a general hardware store,
Mhm.
right? So if you were gonna buy a set of tools to maintain your office equipment, stuff like that, that would have to be justified through the receipts. Then
Yes,
that would be an allowable cost.
yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. I'm sorry.
And when's the full rollout for both the travel and the P card?
So we're starting, I believe, towards the end of this, we will be meeting department by department and rolling out and by department. Um, we can include the legislature first, if you like. Mr. Donald Camacho is our P card trainer and program administrator for it. He will be back on island next week, and then he'll be starting to roll out this program for Saipan. We've already rolled this out for Rhoda and Tinian, at least for the P card, the expense. The individual travel cards, these individuals will need to be trained and sign an agreement form in order for us to release it. For Rhoda, um, we've released all the travel cards that we pre-ordered, and our resident director is responsible to make sure that the individual that receives a travel card is trained and signs the agreement. And we did the same for Tinian. So this allows us, Tinian had an issue where some vendors would not accept any PO, and they needed advance payment, and so it hindered their operation. So this P card was able to resolve that issue.
Okay.
So we're excited about what this can do and help with our offices not having to deal with routing a PO, or and even to get someone paid. The service that you need done. If the card ever declines, you'll just please need to make a phone call. Well, you should have a contact person in our P card team that you can contact during working hours, and they can probably resolve that in a few minutes. Whether, let's say, it's a blacklisted merchant, and we know that that's an error for some reason, they can release it, and in minutes, real time, just wait a few minutes and go back and charge it, and it'll go through. So we'll have a customer service program for it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Secretary. I think just one last question, because this is stimulus that's coming out. So anything in regards to the first stimulus card? Nothing. I mean, they can't request it because they still have it. You can just transfer the funds in there. They can. No, they
No,
have to just destroy that
just
first card.
yeah, it's a paperweight now.
Okay.
They can just throw it.
All right.
I will come up with a resolution to the unused portion on the first stimulus. On the second stimulus, they will receive a completely brand new card.
Okay.
And same process. Call and activate it, and then go and use it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Secretary. I know one of the main questions that the committee had was in regards to the provisions of government, which, from every budget hearing, that's the one concern that we hear from all agencies is the zero in operations. And so we will wait on the revised budget, and if we have any questions in regards to any major changes that we see come July 1st, we'll reach out to your office again and
Yes, please.
call you in for clarification. And so at this time, again, Secretary, thank you for taking the time. I know it's been over 2 hours, but we appreciate your patience and understanding as well as answering the questions that the members have. And so, again, thank you, and you are now excused from today's.
Thank you,
meeting.
Chairman. Thank you, members. And
Thank
my office is always available when you please contact me.
Thank you. All right, members, we are still on recess with our Monday meeting, and so we will adjourn now and reconvene after a 5 to 10 minute break. And so, can I get a motion for adjournment? All right, motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. This meeting is hereby adjourned at 3:57.